This presentation, there's a few things in this. We'll try to note all your questions down. I'm sure everyone's going to have a whole heap of questions. But what we wanted to take you through was a few things. One, the rationale around some of our packaging strategy. And then after this, there'll be a bit of a talk about the license. I know there's been a bunch of questions in the Discord on the license. And so we'll try to jump into those a little bit as well. Always love to start with what are we building and why? I think when we started on this journey almost 2.5 years ago now, our goal is really to power all of accelerated compute. And AI is certainly part of that. But Max as a platform is actually the modular accelerated execution platform. And so our goal at a very high level is to very much power accelerated compute around the world. And so I think everything we talk about today, keep that in the back of your mind because it is a unifying story. And it's a really important one that's very true to our vision of what we're trying to achieve. So a bit of the history, I think everyone here will know this. What is the story of Mojo and Max? We first shipped Mojo back in 23 by itself. It was an individual package. You could download and install it. We rolled it out on Linux, then we rolled it out on Mac. Before that, it was only available in the cloud. And then earlier this year, we debuted Max by itself, originally at the very end of February. On the 29th of Feb, it rolled out by itself. And so obviously you could install Mojo by itself, then you could install Max by itself, and we kept those packages very separate, predominantly so that folks in the community could have the option to install just Mojo if you wanted to use Mojo. And then for users who wanted to come along and try Max, they wanted to do that. Then we combined them. So then we said, okay, now we're going to have this story where Max has Mojo, but Mojo still exists by itself. And that's where we are today. That's the story of all the way up currently in the most stable release. Increasingly, it's gotten very difficult to keep them separate, actually. We'll walk through why. And I think this is an important part of what we're trying to explain today. And the idea that Mojo and Max being separate things has actually gotten a lot harder. Here's why. So to start with, there is a lot of confusion for new people who come to our website, go through our docs and user flows to install our product. There is a lot of confusion between, hang on, what is Mojo? What is Max? How does Max fit within Mojo? Should I be installing Mojo? Should I install Max? If I want to program with just CPUs or GPUs when they come, can I do that on the single install? Can I do that under the package? So we have very consistent feedback on confusion around what to install, and that's very much our problem. The second one is just the package size. Package size is large, and we obviously want it to be very small. And we're working very hard. There's a bunch of dependencies, and Zach can talk about this, but there is a bunch of dependencies that we're looking to reduce in the existing Max package to make it much smaller. So it'll be a streamlined experience. One thing that's very, hopefully everyone here is excited about, we are incredibly excited about, is that GPU support is coming. And for that, it is highly tied into the Max runtime and the overall orchestration components that fit within Max, not within Mojo as it stands. I think there is a story here where we just want things to be simpler. It is a lot simpler to explain our product very much as this overarching platform, which is Max, the modular accelerated execution platform. Mojo is part of that. A new packaging infrastructure is part of that. Our framework is part of that. And so putting it under one thing actually makes it a lot easier to explain, one. And then the other thing, which again, is something that we have to deal with on our side, but it also enables us to very much keep up chip velocity. It gets more complex trying to keep everything separate and isolated than if it's running through our CI infrastructure and build infrastructure in a single way. And then also just Mojo can be used without Max from the Max package. So the idea that you can just install Max today, you can just use Mojo by itself. You don't have to use the other components if you choose not to. And then lastly, there's this just broader point that we want to stay true to our vision, right? Mojo was always designed to be a language to support this broad vision of accelerated compute infrastructure. That is why we actually built the language in the first place. And so keeping them constantly separate is actually creating more challenges for us, but also just stepping back. It also, I think, creates some separation from our actual vision of what Max is and what we're trying to achieve with Max. As many of you, you've already seen this in some of the steps that we're beginning to move towards. We are going to start packaging Max and Mojo together. And this will then be the only option moving forward from a few weeks from now. And Zach can explain why, like how that's going to work, the mechanics of it through Magic. The reasons for this are becoming increasingly because of these 3 points. And we talk about this a little bit on our website. One is that the accelerators, particularly as we move past CPUs, they require runtime components and orchestration logic that just fall within all of the infrastructure that we're building for Max. not purely for Mojo by itself. The best way to use Mojo with GPUs will be through Max. And inside the Max framework, we have some incredible graph APIs and many other components of Max framework sit within Max. And Mojo makes Max incredible for accelerated compute programming. And of course, it doesn't just stop with GPUs. Our vision, again, if you step back and you look at accelerated compute more broadly, it's not just GPUs. There are many companies around the world that are interested in partnering with us for ASICs and other types of custom silicon, and they want to be able to use that with Max, and they want to be able to accelerate their workloads too. And so Mojo being part of that story just helps us even more. So we think this is the right thing for now. Obviously, we want feedback. This is just we're trying to do the right thing by everyone. We're trying to simplify our own infrastructure and make it easier to get this out to everyone. We're trying to really move people along these golden paths to make it faster and easier to deploy without the infrastructure and build with what we're producing. So please keep giving us feedback. We're definitely listening to it. But as it stands, we want this progressive story to really move towards Max nightlies and then Max stable editions that have one path for both Max and Mojo included in it. Do you want us to pause for questions, or do we want to keep going?
A suggestion, why don't you keep going? Because it's just the most common questions are like, is this bad for Mojo somehow? And
Yep.
I think the answer is no. I don't think it changes anything for Mojo, but I think that understanding the other parts of the talk would make that more clear.
Let's do it. All right, Zach, you just tell me when to go next, all right?
Yeah. So that's exactly right. Just starting off, I'm really excited to get to talk about this because we've been working on this for a bit, and I just keep checking the time because I could talk about this for hours because it's a fun topic for me. But starting off, Mojo and Max, they're in a much different place than we started out. We've had long-standing issues with the modular CI that we've been chasing for a while, but at the same time, we've had to reevaluate things given where we want to go and how to fix things. Next slide. So limitations today. So modular CI, it's this bespoke thing that we invented. It made a lot of sense for Mojo and Max, and given what we were building then and some of the limitations, a lot of that's a bit moot now. And what we ran into is we're reinventing a lot of the wheels. And part of this is that Mojo and Max don't really stand alone. You use them with Python, you use them with other tools, you use them with Python dependencies. And having this independent package manager separate from the way that you version your Python code and all of your other dependencies becomes this complex monster that we give to people that they have to now manage things separately. And so it makes the Python interop story really complicated, but that's what we're actually going after for a lot of it. We have a lot of users that want to use Max that aren't using Mojo. We have a lot of users that are using Mojo, and it makes it complex. How do we solve all of the same problems? And we didn't really want to put too much investment into trying to just replicate everything that existed in some of these other solutions. We'd rather integrate with those solutions. And I think that's where we're going. And just a more of an aside to that, one more part of that's difficult is like, how do we support people that want to use different versions of Max with their code? You want, say you check out of your code base 12 months ago, you should be able to rebuild using the Max that was then with whatever dependencies had back then. These are all problems that we ran into that we wanted to try to solve. So people come to Max for different reasons. People want to use, we want to be flexible to a bunch of different use cases, but also be something that's easy, that gets out of your way at the same time, which makes it complicated to build a system that is this get out of my way, but also let me do everything. And Python interop is one of the problems that we ran into, but we also have people that just want to have an existing AI pipeline that they already have set up and just use Max. They want to make it part of their solution that they already have. And so that means also, how do we integrate with PyTorch and Onyx and NumPy and Jupyter? Maybe I got Julia and or Rust or something in my complicated environment that I've set up from going end to end. And so how can we work within that, but also version with it? And then more importantly, having this like consistent reproducible build. I already talked about it a second ago, but it should be trivial for, say, you working with and collaborating with other people, or somebody finds your code on GitHub to be able to run it. And I know a lot of people in the community have complained about like how do I check out a version of Max to a specific version? And then you also have to have instructions on how to check out your Python dependencies. So how can we solve that? But also this carries over to how you deploy. It should be easy enough to take this environment and containerize it and throw it up in your production environment. So these are overarching goals. So we step back. Next slide. So solution. It reduced two different options here, or two different ways of solving this that kind of work together. One is adopting standard packaging that exists in all of our ecosystems. right now focusing on Max on Conda. And it turns out Conda does a lot of things that we already did similar in modular CLI inside the package. So it actually works really well. But also, how do you, more than that, because Conda is an ecosystem, provide like a first-class environment for developing with Max and Mojo? And so it came to two-part solution to this. So today we have old busted modular CLI. It's been great. We've got it to a good place, but also it's just not serving us well. So now we have Magic CLI, which is a much better solution. So Magic CLI, it's a brand new package manager. It's a virtual environment around your code. So you can think of it as like a code-centric package management solution. It manages all of your Max dependencies plus all of your Python and other dependencies. It has full Conda integration, but it also has full PyPy integration. So you can pull anything from pip or from any other package ecosystem into it. It's built on this open source project called Pixie, but we add a bunch on top of it. It's also going to be the basis for new features. But the cool part about this is that we have Magic, but we also have these industry standard packages. It is entirely optional to use Magic, but we think that it provides the best user experience and we think you'll love it. So talking about the Max Conda package a bit, we have this new channel set up. You can use any of the front ends that work with the Conda ecosystem. The package internally, it's actually made up of a bunch of internal packages, but it's an implementation detail you don't have to worry about. But that's important because that actually helps us reduce the package size. One of the things that occurs with the current tough package, the modular CLI package that we have today, is that you download things that you don't necessarily need. We have a whole version of PyTorch included in there for just in case you used a PyTorch model. We have wheels that are compiled for different versions of Python you might not be using. But what's nice is in this new system, you can just express your dependencies. We can pick up on them dynamically. So we end up shipping less. So the package size is overall smaller. Now that is separated a bit here in that in the Conda environment, you actually are isolated from your system, which is both a good thing, but it does mean that you're making up some of that space that we saved by installing separate implementations from your distro, but that does give you that reproducibility. So in the end, it's great. So using Magic, it's really simple. It's project oriented. So think of it around your code base. It works like Git. So it's aware of your current working directory. It installs a virtual environment into that current working directory. You can initialize a new project that creates a manifest in your directory. And then once you're in there, you get this virtual environment command called magic run, and you can run any command, or you can use magic shell and open a subshell. And now you're in this environment that has Mojo. It has an independent version of Python from your system, but it's versioned for your code. So you can say your code depends on this version of Python. You can add dependencies like PyTorch or CUDA or basically anything from the Conda ecosystem, but anything from pip. It's all accessible in your package and it's all stored in there. So all of your dependencies are managed in your appropriate project manifest. It can be a PyProject.toml if your package is, or if your project is an entirely Python project. There's also Mojo project if your code is a Mojo project. You can have sub-projects eventually. That's all coming soon. But then you also have the Pixie.toml if your environment is not code specific. It's just a set of tasks, but you still want to express dependencies. And then, as I said, you got this Magic folder that exists with your code that has your virtual environment. One thing I want to call out, this comes up, big question. You see these .environment file folders everywhere. It's actually, what's cool is in the backend, it has a global cache. So every one of these environments are getting a link to that cache. So you're not dealing with every single one of your virtual environments having a separate copy. So that's been a problem in the past with if you ever used npm, which copies the entire environment, it's solved in this setup. But you also have this lock file concept that helps with reproducibility. Just quickly, this is what it looks like right now. These aren't set in stone. Commands may change soon, but it's super simple. You initialize your project, you get your lock file, and you get your project toml file. And this toml file is basically how you express your dependencies, but all your other package information. Eventually, this will all play into future features. But for now, you can see how the channel system works, where it pulls in our channels. It also works off CondaForge packages, which is a big ecosystem of compiled packages for different platforms. And it has all of your dependencies down at the bottom. So when you add your Python and other dependencies, they're all listed. And you can either edit this file or you can use the Magic CLI to modify this file for you. So next slide. So one big thing with this is that if you're using a stable version of Max, you no longer need to do modular auth anymore. All of that is removed now. If you're using a nightly version, that might not be true, but for stable versions right now, it is completely open, so you don't have to authenticate anywhere, which is really awesome. We hope that removes a bunch of resistance to using anything. You can try it right now. So the curl command is there. More instructions are on the Discord channel today. We're also going to update the Homebrew and Debian package to include Magic in the future, and I'll go into that when I talk about the timeline here for the rollout. So how this is all going to roll out. So Magic, the alpha version's out right now. Max 24.4 is already available as a Conda package. We're going to start releasing nightly releases of Max 24.5 next week, I believe, is our timeline for that, where you can start using 24.5 nightly releases. And then in a few weeks, approximately, we'll have 24.5 ship with both Conda, and it will be the final modular CLI release that we'll release for that with the 1.0 release of Magic. So it will be the last major release. There might be minor releases, but major release of Max that will ship on the modular CLI as part of this transition. And then next month, if you already have modular CLI with Homebrew or Debian package, the plan there is to add Magic to that same package, and then eventually that package will transition just to be Magic over time. But we'll keep the CLI in there for a while. And then in several months, we'll turn down our package hosting infra for the existing modular CLI in favor of the Conda ones. The older versions of Max are already in Conda already, so they're already there, but we're going to just turn down that infrastructure just to move on to the new one because it works so much better and you don't need auth. Is most of what I think I had on my speaker notes, but I just want to say thank you. It's been a big journey. We've heard a lot of feedback from the community about issues that they've ran into and gave us a moment to step back and rethink this entire implementation to hopefully make things a lot easier and a lot less friction to get started with everything. That's all I've got. Thank you. Next.
Any questions to Tim or Zach? Yeah, Gabriel.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense from a user perspective, seeing this as an outside user. I've got a question about this. So since before we had Mojo was technology and Max was a product, right? So that was before. Now that it's a lot more integrated, I'm wondering if Max is becoming more like the distinction between the two is becoming more and more an implementation detail of Mojo. Do you folks need to actually keep two distinct things? Do you need two names, or can you just say there is only one thing? I think it would make it a lot simpler, but I'm not insane modular. I cannot say what are your plans or whatever.
Gabriel, you don't like saying Max, Mojo, Magic and repeating that fast? I think our answer is actually that Max is really an overarching platform, right? That's the goal. And it's going to have a lot of components. Our goal is ultimately to enable folks to use those components in any way that they want. And so I think increasingly we want Max to be this centerpiece of infrastructure. And certainly I think the way we think about it today is we want you to be able to download that. It's going to be easier for us as we build our tutorials and examples and all of this other infrastructure to have a consistent user experience to download it, try it. Even if you want to use Mojo, our suspicion is in getting started guides and tutorials, particularly as GPUs come up, that you are going to want to play with Gen AI examples and a whole bunch of stuff. That's going to end up needing Max. And so it will create a super awkward experience if we started trying to package those in different ways. And then that would actually, a lot of what Zach's just walked through here is about simplifying the user experience. And so for us, making it more complex just makes all those workflows for us right now harder. And so I think over time, there's already a lot of strong brand affinity for Mojo. I think people love Mojo in its own way. We would love that to be similar with Magic. I actually think one of the things we need to do, and we haven't made any decisions on this, but one of the challenges even today is when we refer Max framework, people don't really know what that means. And today it's a compiler and runtime components and a series of APIs. You can do things in Mojo, you can do things in Python. So I think what you'll end up seeing from us is Max is the overarching platform with many components. We have a few components today. We will continue to package those as one thing I would certainly say in the near future, that's our approach. But over time, if it doesn't make sense to do that and we can spread it out, then maybe that's on the table too. We're just going to listen as we roll out, particularly as we head toward GPUs, roll it out, see how you all react and give us feedback. And if we need to make changes, we will. Does that answer your question?
And let me just add one quick thing. Gabriel, I think you're talking about like Mojo is a technology component lots of people can use, and Max is a product that ends up being paid, right? And so I think the shift, which Tim will talk about in 1 second here, is we want people to use Max for free too.
Yeah.
So that's the key thing. We're not saying Max is paid and Mojo is free. We're saying both of these things are free. And so that's a big shift. And that's a new thing we're just pulling together over the last month or so. But